This is the 6th annual International Temple Mount Awareness Day, and thank you for joining us. And we're ready for our next question, Rabbi. Our next question, which we've received from many people. In fact, I'd like to add at this moment that all throughout the year we receive many questions. We don't have the time to answer every question. I apologize for that. And hopefully everybody's listening who's ever asked a question, and you'll get your answer right here. As a matter of fact, throughout the year, Rabbi, we discuss many of these issues in our radio broadcast, Temple Talk, in our Parshat Shavua, the weekly Torah teaching.
Specials that we do occasionally.
Specials that we do on the Facebook page.
Several people actually mentioned on their emails, well, maybe this is something, or actually somebody mentioned, I know this is something that you discuss often. And the truth is, again, we encourage everyone to follow these outlets, the Facebook page and the YouTube channel, and your weekly newsletter as well that we have quite a number of people subscribing to that. You can subscribe at www.templeinstitute.org to our newsletter, and we do cover these things. I also want to say, Yitzchak, before you ask this question, that regarding all those people who have written into info@templeinstitute@gmail.com for this particular broadcast, we will endeavor privately also to answer all of those questions within the coming weeks, even those that we don't get to today, because we're basically trying to answer the most pressing and general questions first. But we've got such great questions, and we appreciate it so much that we will be answering them as soon as we can. But just give us time, because we're quite overwhelmed with the amount that we received.
The next question will focus on location. Where is the third temple going to be built? And a number of people ask this. We have a question from Brian. And Brian asks, how do you respond to the historian Josephus and his explanation of the location of the temple? I might add that Brian adds in his question, thank you so much for your weekly radio shows. I listen regularly on YouTube in Kansas, USA. He's referring to Temple Talk, of course, which is once a week, a 45-minute radio show. And it can be heard on our YouTube channel, Temple Institute YouTube channel. It's also on universaltorah.com. It's also on Israel National Radio. And of course, it's also on our Facebook page. And David asked this question. And he also starts out with, thanks for your devotion to the cause of the Holy Temple. Well, thank you very much, David. We appreciate everybody's appreciation. And we appreciate your interest as well. He asked, didn't Herod build his temple next to the second temple so that there would be no interruption in the divine service? If so, and if the Dome of the Rock is built over Herod's temple and not the original first or second temple site, then wouldn't there be room to build the third temple over the original first and second temple site? And finally, we have from Laura this question, must the temple be built on the site of the Dome of the Rock, or is it possible to share the Temple Mount and place it in a line with the East Gate? Many think that is where it originally was because you could look straight across toward the Mountain of Olives through the East Gate. Rabbi, what do you say?
Yes, this is the question of the hour somehow. If the first question that we covered today on the 6th Annual International Temple Mount Awareness Day was when, the second most popular pressing question is where. As if to say that maybe we're not sure, or we lost the location, or there's some question about it. This is an extremely popular notion right now. A number of books have been written by people proponing this, what they call an alternate theory. Yitzchak, you mentioned a couple of letters here. Some people are talking about it. Someone said next to the Dome of the Rock, somewhere else on the Temple Mount. There's also a huge following of people that are suggesting that the actual location of the temple is down in the city of David, and that what was going on on the so-called Temple Mount in the time of the temple was actually just a Roman fort. And there are even people that are suggesting that the temple was on the other side of the city, in the Talpiot area. All sorts of theories abound. I recently was watching a YouTube interview with an author. I don't even want to mention his name. An author who wrote one of these books. I'll tell you why in a minute. Author wrote one of these books, and he was saying, well, there's going to be a lot of people that are going to be very irate about my theory, and they're going to be very emotional, and I expect that. I expect a lot of controversy. And, well, I got to tell you, I am kind of irate about it, and I'll tell you why. Because these theories are based on deliberate ignoring of Jewish sources. And I find that very, very surprising. For example, one of these very popular books that are popular in certain circles today, it doesn't take into consideration any of the actual archaeological connection between the Temple Mount and Jewish history. And furthermore, it doesn't really discuss any of the classic Jewish sources, but rather it is based on speculation of certain verses, mainly from the New Testament, and also things that Josephus says that are, I think, widely misunderstood and also mistranslated. The thing is, there is a tremendous body of unbroken tradition in the classic Jewish sources regarding the Temple Mount, and also there is the whole gauntlet of Islamic history that is based on this Jewish history. True that in recent years there's been a phenomenon that we refer to as the Temple Denial Syndrome, where the forces of Islam today have turned on the temple, and they've decided that they're going to maintain a position that the temple never was, and the temple is a myth created by the Jewish people. But that's just
they must
in line.
welcome these theories.
Right, but that's just in line with their political agenda. But as we've pointed out, and as you can see on our website where we have these things archived, the classic publication actually written and published by the Muslim Waqf before the State of Israel was established, the classic publication called A Brief Guide to Al-Haram Al-Sharif, which is an English language tour guide of the Temple Mount. There it states that it's a universal belief that the temple was located here, and it's beyond dispute.
If I may interrupt for a second, Rabbi, the Dome of the Rock was originally built on that spot in order to preserve and mark the site of the Holy Temple.
So the first thing I have to say is I find, and again, forgive me for just being candid with you, right? I find this whole line of reasoning to be somewhat arrogant in its preposterous suggestion that the Jewish people are ill-informed.
Drop the ball somewhere.
Drop the ball somehow, or like they like to call it, the temples that history forgot, or Jerusalem's forgotten temples, or how could history be so stunningly wrong, or something like that. I'll tell you how, because it isn't. What is very compelling about all of this, and you know what? People have written, and they've asked us to respond specifically, in detail, in a scholarly fashion, to many of these particular points that are brought forth, and I can't really do that because it's pop scholarship. It's not serious scholarship, and this or that quotation or authority that they kind of flaunt and bring forward isn't in any way. It isn't carrying any weight at all in this entire equation. The classic Jewish sources of the Tractate Midot and other areas of Jewish knowledge from this period of time are so precise in their description of the Temple Mount and its proximity with the Kidron Valley and the Mount of Olives, and the archaeological evidence that it can be seen with the naked eye, and that has been uncovered on the Temple Mount, the little that's been made available, because there has never been an actual, in modern times, an actual archaeological excavation on the Temple Mount. But it all indicates the presence of the temple and the parallel and the perfect interrelationship between what we see on the Temple Mount today and that which is described in the primary Jewish sources, such as the Mishnah, are absolutely spot on, absolutely perfect. So this whole idea of especially this idea of the temple being down in the city of David is, I have to tell you, if I may, from an authoritative, traditional, knowledgeable Jewish perspective, it's really just absolutely ridiculous. There's no such thing. And one has to wonder where all of this is coming from. And indeed, if we're honest, we will find in every case of those that are proponing these theories there is an agenda. People have their agendas, and the agenda here is quite simple and straightforward. The agenda is that if you say that the temple doesn't go on the Temple Mount, and no existing structures that are currently present in the geopolitical reality would have to be disturbed, why then you, Israel, can build the temple that much faster, and everything can go just hunky-dory, swimmingly, and that will, by the way, facilitate the particular eschatological scenario that, yes, that we authors, etc., and our constituents subscribe to. Pardon me, but this is a very idiosyncratically Jewish affair, Jewish subject, and we never lost it. We never lost it. We did not drop the ball. We know exactly where the temple stood, and this whole attempt to hoodwink, the Jewish people, or somehow kidnap the historical reality and rewrite it, it's ill-timed. And even those that are swept up by these notions. So what I'm saying, first of all, is I'm accusing these authors of deliberate manipulation, and it's a bit underhanded, because it's really ignoring the overwhelming evidence that the temple stood exactly where it stood. That's one thing. I think really, again, I'm just going to be honest with you, I've got to say that there's a certain amount of deliberate manipulation and misrepresentation here, because they've got to know better. I mean, because they're just so selectively deciding what to include and what not to include, and they're just ignoring the Jewish perspective. I mean, pardon me, but isn't it our subject? But that's one thing regarding the authors, and yes, I am rather angry about this. But as far as many, many good people that are being swept up in this whole enthusiasm of, this speculation that there could be another location, I think it's rather naive, because it's based on the idea that, in fact, I even saw the author discussing it in this interview, saying, well, listen, if it's in the city of David, Israel owns that land, it's administered by Israel, there's no problem, they can build it right now. And then, of course, the rest I'll leave up to you to understand why they're in this hurry, because it will facilitate what they're expecting. That's not the point. The naivety is the fact that the situation geopolitically is extremely complex, and I think it's not something that the government of Israel is considering at the moment. However, again, that's what our movement and our educational programs and everything that we're all about and dedicated to is all about, and that is beginning to change. And there are even voices, for example, in the last Knesset, Israel's 19th Knesset, that were strong proponents of Jewish prayer on the Temple Mount and even the concept of the rebuilding of the Holy Temple. But it's not so simple that just, okay, well, if it's actually down the road a little bit and nothing has to happen, so it could happen tomorrow. That's really not the case at all. But again, it can only go in one place, because that is the place that was chosen by God, and nothing has changed there at all.
So may I ask, Rabbi, first of all, it's always been a geopolitically sensitive place, and I believe there are some of our sages who say that the reason that in Torah, it's in the book of Deuteronomy, it says the place that I will choose, the place I will show you, it's not specifically determined then, is so that the nations in anticipation wouldn't claim that area before Israel could enter and take over. But there are some people who say, well, you know what, the dome's here, so why can't you just move it over a little bit and, do the nice thing, we'll compromise. Right. What's wrong with that?
And like Laurel Ruth was asking, well, many think that it was actually lined up with the Eastern Gate, and all sorts of ideas here, and then questions about the exact location of the Dome of the Rock. The idea here is this. These locations are extremely precise. In fact, to quote the great Rambam Maimonides, he talks about how the place of the altar is exceedingly specific, because it's the very place where Abraham bound Isaac, where Jacob laid his head and saw the ladder, where Adam actually built an altar, and so did Noah and Cain and Abel, and from whence Adam himself was actually created. This is a very profound concept, the parallel and the connection between the location of the Temple Mount and the Garden of Eden. This was also asked by someone, the idea that everything that goes on in the Holy Temple, and we can elaborate on this later, is actually a reflection and effecting a tikkun, a rectification of what went on in the Garden of Eden. It's a continuation of the divine service. But the point is, we know exactly where it goes. The location of the Holy of Holies in the place of the Dome of the Rock is very, very specific, where the Ark of the Covenant. So the Dome of the Rock covers over a rock. It's called the foundation stone, and that is the center of the universe. The place of the altar, right outside that building on the Temple Mount, the place where Abraham bound Isaac, the center of creation. This is something that is not negotiable. This is something that is so specific, and yes, it's a tremendous challenge. But as we mentioned earlier, I think in the first question that we posed, it's all about the collective willingness and power of dedication of the Jewish people to deal with this and to bring it to its proper conclusion. And we appreciate the help, but nudging it a little bit down the road isn't going to accomplish anything. That's not the idea here. First of all, if you have any understanding of the mentality of the people that we're up against and what this is all about, and the logistics of the Middle East, that's really not gonna do it. Moving it down the road is not going to help. But that's not my problem. The problem is that's not the right place. That's not the right place. The place was determined by God from the beginning of creation and from before creation. And that's exactly why it's such a hot and contested item. And that's exactly why everything that's going on here is around that place, because the fate of humanity is dependent on the rebuilding of the temple, the divine presence shining forth from there. That's what this is. From that particular place, as God says, the place that I will show you. It's not like God is saying, well, I wanted to show it to you over there, but listen, that's a little bit busy over there, so we'll do it down the road. So thanks, but no thanks. And I'd really like to take this opportunity to clear this up, because it's such a major question and it's occupying people's minds, and again, a lot of well-wishers, a lot of manipulators, but also a lot of well-wishers that are just hoping maybe this is the answer. No, that's not the answer. The answer is that we continue to grow into, as we are now, the people that we need to be, that we need to face the facts, face the issues, that the people of Israel has to be ready to take this on, because they know that this is the answer. And there's only one place, the place that I will show you, and thankfully and blessedly, we know exactly where it is. So let's just put that whole thing to rest. It's not down in the city of David. It's not across town. It's not next to any existing structure. It's exactly where it has to go. How will that come about? That's another question. How and when? Under what circumstances? I think when the Jewish people continue to become so focused and so aware of who they are and what they have to do, and that nothing can stand in their way, and they have that ratzon, that tremendous desire and will to be the people of God, which is what the state of Israel has to become, and it is already on the road to becoming what it's all about. That's when we will see the rectification of this issue, not by compromising, not by pretending that we don't know where it is, not by giving up, but by realizing that it's up to us to bring the light of divine presence into the world, to build the Holy Temple in its proper place. You are watching the 6th Annual International Temple Mount Awareness Day from Jerusalem. We so appreciate your questions, your interest, your support. Follow us on templeinstitute.org, on Facebook, on Twitter as well, on YouTube. There are donation options available at templeinstitute.org. Hope you're enjoying the broadcast, and we'll be right back.